So if you notice, I don't have earphones on, and that is because also I want to show people that's a tree, not my hair. I mean, though my hair does look like that most of the time. Because my iPad's at 11% again.
Okay. So you need
Let's
that plug to charge instead of have earphones.
Yeah, you know what?
Okay.
I'm hanging by a thread these last couple of weeks.
Oh, that's all right.
I've been sick. I have green coming out of literally my eyes.
Oh no.
Yeah, pollen is a beach.
Yeah, yeah. It's getting to me. I never used to have issues with allergies, but the older I get, the worse it's been getting. It's been bothering me, and it's not fun.
So first, since we're recording now, I love this new logo. I love this new background. I love it. It looks so good. I feel so professional.
Yeah.
I look like I just climbed out of a dumpster, but I'm on a professional platform hosted by my buddy.
There you go.
Oh my gosh. Well, this will be fun. I dressed myself today for the end times because that's what we're going to talk about. And by dressing myself, I mean I put pants on from yesterday and I'm wearing the same shirt I slept in.
Wow, nice.
Oh, yeah. Need a shower desperately. Ugh. Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Last night was very exciting.
Why is that?
I went to my new members class.
Oh, that's right. A new members class for church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
How many people are in your class?
Not counting already members and the pastor, 6. There were 6 people.
Okay.
And what's interesting is like I didn't recognize them.
Mm.
So, but then again, like I sit in the front, so I don't want to see people behind me in case I get too distracted. But we'll have a ceremony at the end of June, so I'm psyched, and that's when it's official, which means I can then vote in the congregational meetings. And, you know, I have a voice already, but I will have a bigger voice once I'm official.
Nice. Very good. Well,
Psyched.
Onward. I feel like I should have my pronouns there too now that you do.
Can
So
you
I'm
please
changing
get
it.
woke? Get woke, please.
I'm
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like a recluse. What are you talking about? I'm just a default not woke because I don't interact enough.
That's not true because I am dragging you out of that
Thank
little
you.
cavern that you're living in.
I
I'm
appreciate
just
it.
kidding.
I finally watched that the the video you sent me from Niantic with the transgender woman.
Oh, mm-hmm.
What was her name again?
Renee
Renee.
Manning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I mean. Again, like you're pulling me out into things that I mean, not that I don't want to experience. I just
You don't
haven't
come across
had.
it.
Yeah, so it was good. It was really good to hear her perspective and
So,
the emotion behind it.
so for anybody that doesn't know, we had a transgender woman come to our church and give the sermon. And she wasn't just a transgender woman, she was training to be a pastor. And she gave her story, and she goes church to church to pretty much expose people like yourself, like not that you don't want to meet them, you just haven't come across. So she's putting the T in trans, and she gave a great speech. I did not share, and I should have shared this also, and I'll put it back up. But there's a second video where after the service, she did a Q&A where people could ask her questions, and she could be open and answer, and that was even more moving. But yeah, what was your reaction to seeing that video, to seeing that up there?
Oh, what now? We're talking about the same one. We're not
The one that
switching
you
gears.
saw,
Yeah. No, yeah, it was. I think I was just fascinated to hear that perspective and just think about how much guts it must have taken to transition and go back to work as a woman when everybody known you as a man for who knows how many years. It's not
like
like
30 years.
yeah,
Definitely.
I mean, talk about having to have guts and yeah, so oh,
But
that's
sorry.
impressive. No, it's impressive. So
I was gonna say, what the most interesting thing for me was that she never left God, which is unfortunately really rare because especially trans, like being gay is one thing, but being trans is a whole different animal. And because you're physically changing your body.
mhm.
So a lot of Christians, like, it's one thing to be like, oh, just don't have sex. But a lot of Christians look at it like you're mutilating this creation that God made you in. And,
Right,
God made you the way you're supposed to be. And that's their argument a lot. So
right.
for her to not only transition but then continue to pursue ministry and still have her faith in God, that's the part that hit me the most, because when I was at the last place, I almost said
I
it.
know it's hard.
When I was at the last
Good
place,
catch.
yeah, shoo-ba-doo-ba-doo. Oh shit, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Darn, that's okay.
You know what sucks is when I rewatch these and
Yeah.
I see my train of thought, I'm like, oh, I was going here.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And
Oh,
you can't add it back
get
in,
it
right?
back, get it back. Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
So when I was at the last place, even when I was like good with everybody, I still behind the scenes was like reaching out to people I knew in my past that were gay and who I thought had a Christian background. And
Mhm.
I was like, hey, because I deep down I felt really guilty that I was going to church
Yeah.
because I was part of the gay community before I was part of a church community. And
Uh,
so because my depression had brought me so far away from every community, I went back to a church community because it's like was like the easiest thing to go to. So as I started feeling better, I was like reaching out to people and I'm like, hey, like I know you used to teach CCD, or I know you used to, you know, you used to have us sing these terribly boring Kyries. Do you still believe? And they across the board, all the people that I spoke to were like, no, I don't believe anymore. Like once I came out and found myself, like um I left
mm,
God altogether.
mhm.
So and that's very common. But I was, looking, and like in the last episode when I was talking about those two guys, um that's why I was desperately looking for people that still identified as a Christian, but also identified as a gay Christian,
Yeah.
especially coming from a place where they were told that they were wrong and it wasn't okay. So
Yeah.
Renee, not only keeping her commitment to God, and then pursuing teaching others about God, that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, that's unusual, and, it would be really interesting to hear, people like a conversation between, 2 sides of that coin, right? The people who decided, "You know what? I'm done with religion after embracing my sexuality as it is," and those who decided to stay in the church and, just hear the conversation that would come up. I'd be really curious. Everybody has to make different choices and has different experiences that have come from that faith background, and some of them can be because of life circumstances. They can be really traumatic and hurtful, and yet still some people it can still be affirming. It's really interesting.
I think for many years, because and I know every time I say something like this, people are like, not all Christians. And like I get that. For anybody that wants to say, well, not all Christians, like I hear you. But um most churches were like not really cool with gay people. So and even just the place that I came from, they acted cool with gay people, but really the goal was that you would be fixed. And
Yeah.
so they really position it in a way like it's either you stay celibate and then you can have all of us and all of this, or you choose one person of the same sex. So it's
Mhm.
not always, it doesn't always feel like their decision, I think. Most of the time it's like it's us or them. Like,
Right.
you know?
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Well, so anyhow, thanks for sharing that. That was good
well, I'm glad you
to
watched.
watch. Yeah.
I have a lot of sensory issues while I'm sitting here stuffing my face with an egg.
Is that what you're eating?
I had an egg and some uh now that I'm back home, generic Chobani.
Ooh. Lots of
And
protein.
that
Protein's good for
matters.
you.
Let's start.
Okay.
I'm Carolyn,
And I'm Faith
and this is Faith Forward with open minds.
and open hearts.
And today, you guys know we're talking about the end times. So,
Dun 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 la 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 la.
Faith, I am going to let you take the reins on this monstrosity
Oh my gosh,
because
you are?
I am, because I know of the end times. We
Mm,
dabbled in some end times speech before the quarantine, which,
mm,
just to be clear, when we got to quarantine part, most of those people were like, "Ooh, this is it. This is end
uh-huh.
times." So I
Yeah.
didn't have enough time to learn about end times. So I sent you some videos
Mhm.
of what I watched so that we can discuss it together. Did you watch the Morgan Freeman Apocalypse?
Mhm. I did,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I
there's
really liked that.
that was nice because that's a
Mhm.
whole series on different religions. So like the study of miracles. One episode is the apocalypse. One episode is, I don't know, some other stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
like all of this, these different conversations on God, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
essentially because a play off of his role in the movie. I can't remember the name of the movie where he plays God,
Oh,
but do you
yeah,
remember
that was
that?
Bruce Almighty.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
It was a
right. Yeah.
comedy of all things.
Yeah. So I think that's why he kind of got pulled into narrating that series, and it's just fascinating. And I love him as a spokesperson. Just his voice is
He's
amazing.
when he popped up as God in that movie, I was like, good casting, good casting. Like,
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman can be my lord. Okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy.
So anyhow, so this one video that you had sent me was part of that series, and it was on specifically the apocalypse. And
Yes.
I found it interesting how he kind of went through a whole bunch of different traditions, like you were saying,
Yeah.
and their beliefs about what the end of days, the end of time, the end of the world would look like.
Right.
And kind of he discussed why it was that there was this fascination with this the end of all things and all religions.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
not just Christianity. It's like
yeah.
there's that's what I liked about it um is that so many most religions have an idea of what happens for end times. Not
Hmm.
just death, but like death for all of us.
Hmm.
So, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm curious, did anything kind of stand out for you in that was like, in particular?
Well, since I that's interesting because since I have a limited view of the end times. So I have not read the full book of Revelations, just so you know. I know that it has to do with um I know it has to do with like civil arguments and natural disasters. And ironically enough, um the first Bible study I went to, like it was a Wednesday night, the first time I ever set foot in the old church, they were talking about the end times, which was like right over my head because they were talking about tribulation and pre-tribulation and the antichrist, and I had
Yeah.
no idea what that was. Like
Hmm.
tribulation, I didn't know what that was. So what it narrowed down to, my friend explained it to me that at the end of that night was basically, as evangelicals who are saved, we have a pre-boarding pass
Hmm.
to get out of town right before God blows it up with fire. And so I guess that would be the rapture.
Mhm.
They would take us, and we're good. And then it'll be 7 years of hell, and then once it's all cleared out, bloop, plop us back down, and then we get to live in peace. Oh my God, which
Yeah,
cool.
with a new heaven and a new earth, right?
Yeah,
And there's all kinds of there's all sorts of variations on that same
right.
theme, you know.
So growing up, I remember, um, first of all, the Mayan calendar. I knew that was going to be on there, the
Mhm.
2012 end date, because the way the Mayan calendar went, it just ended at 2012. So what I thought was really interesting, which makes total sense too, that once you dive into, again, context and time period
Mhm.
matters, when
Mhm.
they're counting the different the placements on the calendar, the Mayans were counting like every 400 years has a new beginning. Like
Mhm.
it's a marker for them. So if they die before the end of the 400 years, obviously they're not going to add to the calendar. So
Right.
then you get people come in and be like, they knew this was the end, and da, 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 da. No, they died. They never. If they were still alive, maybe they'd still be making the calendar, because like, all right, this is where it ends, and this is where our new thing begins, and they had to stop and start through
Mhm.
multiple parts of the calendar. So it does show a pattern of, here's the end of this era, and now it's this, and it's the same like we do now, the end of a year, or in China, like, oh, this is the year of the tiger that ends. This is the year of the dragon. You know.
Well, right. But as far as even evangelical Christianity, because that this is my background and what I grew up in, it was the end times, kind of that whole idea that has really taken over the minds of a lot of evangelicals about there being this 7 year period of tribulation, like you were saying, where the Antichrist will come to power at the start of that. And there'll be 3.5 years of peace. Then there'll be 3.5 years of basically hell on earth when everything just breaks loose. Um, and then the tribulation or the rapture will happen sometime in there. Christians debate over whether it's going to be before the tribulation happens, middle of the tribulation, or post. What essentially the rapture is when all Christians are caught up in the sky, supposedly with Christ, and are taken to heaven from the earth. And they mentioned, I think, in that video you sent me, the mark of the beast,
Yeah.
which is the number 666, and in the Book of Revelation, it talks about it being a mark of the Antichrist or the beast, and it's going to be on people's foreheads or on their right hand. And so these ideas have really settled into people's minds, and they are on the lookout for a person, a world leader who is going to come into being, who is proclaiming peace. So, I mean, every evangelical Christian is on the lookout for that. Now, the difference from what I like, the way that I grew up, it completely consumed the way that my family lived. Actually, a lot of it, it was we had food stored away in these big food storage bins. Tried to live off grid as best as we could.
What do you
you
mean?
know where you're not dependent upon the power, or city water, or
How did you do that?
um, yes, you could do, like a generator. You could do solar powered things. You could dig a well. We had a well in our backyard. Um, plant a garden so you could grow your own food, have chickens so you can, have your own eggs, those sorts of things, to be completely self-reliant.
Is that all the
Um,
stuff you had? Is that how you guys did it?
yes, to different varying degrees over the years, off and on. But yeah, that was always sort of the thing. So, like, this whole idea, like, I really felt like from the time that I was born, essentially, that we were in the end times and we were waiting for Christ to return. And for me, that was a very, I know some people in these deconstruction circles have been very traumatized by that idea of the rapture, and they're traumatized because they so many times have entered a house and nobody's home and they think that they've been left behind, and just, the feeling of, oh my god, I'm not, I wasn't saved after all. And for me, that was never, I think there was a few, maybe a couple times where I kind of had that. I was like, oh gosh, nobody's here and they didn't tell me they're gonna be gone. And that kind of came to my
Oh,
head, but I wasn't really deathly scared. I think for the most part, I was pretty convinced that I was saved no matter what. So that was good.
okay.
But this idea, and it made me feel special. This idea that I was in the end times, I knew I was one of God's chosen people. The rest of the world was going to burn, but I was chosen.
Jesus.
It's
But
horrible,
you were
right?
good. You're okay. It's gonna be all right.
Oh my god, it's so horrible. Anyway,
No,
so
it's
I
okay. It's
mean,
not your fault.
that really was my outlook on things, and I really was looking for the end of the world even up until my 30s. I'm
It's
in
okay.
my mid 40s now. Yeah, I mean, I had food stored away in my pantries, extra food, and always had that kind of mindset, like, could I be self-reliant if the government all went to hell and, society completely broke down? And this all also was propagated by the books within the evangelical circles. Like I read the Tim LaHaye's Left Behind series. And one book that really stood out for me that wasn't as very popular, at least to anybody else, but I read it and really took it in word for word, was a book called 666. And it was just this, and I think I read it a couple times. I was so enthralled by the story, about this family who, um, it was a daughter. It's like, I don't know, it's part of her family was saved and were raptured up, but she was left behind with her dad, and they had to, like, try to, they had to, they knew enough to not accept the mark of the beast, so they didn't get condemned to hell with eternity with everybody else who did. But that means that they're trying to live and try to find food because they couldn't. Anyways, it was
Right.
quite a story, and that I was really thought that was going to be the way things were going to be. I thought that was coming. So anyhow, that's kind of my background with that, and that just it engulfed the way that I saw the world. And so, what I would be curious to talk to you about and just kind of discuss is like how that mindset affects the way people engage with the world.
So here's a few things. Number one, even though I wasn't raised on that idea, because of TV media, things like The Walking Dead, things about like movies and stuff that I've seen, I always think to myself, what would we do if, and
Mm,
if like the world order, the order of things fell apart.
mhm,
And I think especially, and I was never totally convinced of the end times, even though the people around me were like this is it, this is game time. Um, I'm more concerned with if it is real. And I mean, let's look at Ukraine right now. There's a video I posted on Facebook where it shows them partying at their Christmas party, and then it cuts to what the building looks like now and the conference room that they had the party in, and it's in rubble, right? So
mhm,
I look at not so much the end times, but like we could lose the law and order of the land at any time. Same way that people were building bunkers in the 60s because they thought they were going to have nuclear war and everything's going to blow up. And so it's not crazy to wonder like what happens if the order of things around us falls apart. I would be lying if I didn't say I still like kind of worry, because if the end times is coming, or even war, if war is coming, or the end times,
mhm,
whatever you want to call it, um, and we lose our rights, which is what the big thing that I think, because of the fear that surrounds that, like right before right before Trump left office, um, gun sales and registrations went up 40%.
mm,
40%.
Yeah.
So, because they were afraid Biden was going to take their guns away, and then they were
Mhm.
afraid that if martial law happened, they couldn't fight the government if they had to fight the government. And I thought to myself, how fucked would we all be? Also, how do I, if I was that generation that had to go through that, like, let's say we were bombed, we live next to a nuclear power plant.
Mhm.
So, and we have a sub base just right across the water. So,
Mhm.
if I think because of where I live too, and the first Wednesday of every month, I hear the sirens as a test. Ever since I was growing up, you always have that idea of like, shit could go down at any point.
Mhm. Mhm.
Could you survive? You know, so it's not
Yeah.
totally crazy to think that either. So you know what I'm
No.
saying?
Well, I think that a point that Morgan Freeman brought up in the video was that the reason why, I guess he was talking about a science experiment that what the scientists performed on people where they were given an electroshock.
Mhm.
And if they were told when that was going to come and they had a countdown saying
Yeah.
like 10, 9, 8, and then, 1, they're going to get a shock and they knew it was coming, the amount of anxiety and pain from that was way less than if the person behind the giving the electroshock just gave it at a random interval. And
Right.
so, so he was making the point that actually that end of times and trying to anticipate what the end of the world might look like is actually a comforting thing for people, to like know something is coming and to be able to anticipate it so it doesn't catch you off guard.
Maybe I maybe I misinterpreted that, but I thought that when they knew it was coming, the pain receptors went off before it happened because they were anticipating it happening.
Hmm.
I maybe
I don't
I
know.
don't,
Maybe I listened to it wrong. Could have
no, I mean,
misinterpreted as well.
no, I I started glazing over things because I was consuming so much. Um but it is a fear tactic, so it makes, I don't know.
The
I
end of
can
the
see,
and yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a whole bunch of reasons why
yeah.
we're so obsessed with these kinds of ideas, and I think that might be one. You want to know what's coming. You don't want to be surprised by the end of something, right? By the
Well,
end of the
and
world in
death.
particular, right?
As humans, we want to know what happens when we die. We want to know what
Sure.
happens at the end, and if the end is the literal like destruction of the earth, we want to know like
Well,
what's going to happen.
and religion often, says to give us the answers to all these questions that really, really haunt us. These existential, questions. What is going to happen when I die? And what's going to happen when the world ends? All these sorts of things, that these big questions, and it's nice to have answers to them.
Well,
But
it's one thing to like be like, what's going to happen when I die, and then it's another thing to worry, what happens right before I die. Do I have to live through the 7 years or the 3.5 years of
mhm,
pure hell on earth? Because that's worse. Because when you're dead, you're dead. You don't feel
right.
anything. Your spirit is free. Whatever you do, what you got to do. But I'm more concerned, and I think other people are more concerned, and your family probably, which is why they stockpiled things, is like, how uncomfortable, how much torture am I going to go through before I die? And God forbid you can't kill yourself because then that's a straight ticket to hell.
Mhm.
So, you know what I mean? It's that in between, that the tribulation part, I think that people are like, well, ooh, like we don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to live through like
Yeah,
Armageddon.
but with when you're looking at it as a Christian and you're believing that end of the world narrative, you believe that you are a special person in the midst of all this. That it gives you purpose and meaning in pain and agony and the worst things that could happen in this world. And that's oddly comforting to some people, that if the worst is going to happen, at least I am going to be have a meaning and a purpose through it all. So it provides some sort of a weird, odd comfort. But I was trying to think of what other reasons people might have for really taking this on, right? And you mentioned it, this element of power and control too. That kind of comes from holding a fear over people, and so it could be used as that too. Like, you better get your life straight with God, otherwise you're going to be left behind when the tribulation comes, and
I
you're going
think
to
the
be
fact
here through
that
that wrath.
I think the fact that nobody knows when it's coming, it's like, you better be good today. You better get your shit together today, because the
Yeah.
rapture could come tomorrow. End of
It's
time
it's
could be
kind of
tomorrow.
coercive. It can be coercive,
Mhm.
right? And some people might just say it in sort of a trying to be helpful and trying to be in a way that they want to save your soul from hell, like they really do.
Yes.
Maybe they really do want to, and they believe that, and they want to get the best for you. But it can also be, it's very manipulative and coercive as well. As like, if you don't change your life, look, God's gonna, you're gonna just be here with the rest of humanity and suffer the torments of the end of the world and all the judgment that should have been had on humanity for all of time. And it's like, it's horrible.
Good
But
Lord. It's
yeah.
like panic buying. It's like, hey, this is only on sale for 2 days. So it doesn't give you time
Exactly.
to think or dissect or make an educated decision. You're like, oh,
Right.
I'm going to just get it. And then you find out you
Right.
don't need it.
Well, and that's one of the things that I I was really concerned with, as working as communications with a church, is I was really concerned with that fine line between communication, when you because I would be doing communications for the church, but oftentimes it's also slash marketing, right? I mean, really, if you're honest with it, it's a lot of the same things as you would
Hmm.
find for business, except they would call it marketing sometimes, and sometimes it's called communications. Anyway, so if there's a fine line between what is marketing, what's communications, and one sort of marketing is sort of a little bit coercive, and at the least, but really manipulative at others when they're trying to send through some subliminal messages or the timing of the ads. And I mean, it's like, gosh, at what point does it cross over that line of being like that's not right? So I was always like, where's that the point where you're giving information to people, but you're still allowing them the free will, and not pushing or them into a decision that's not something that they're fully making on their own, right? So that's a real fine line. I don't know. It's
I'm thinking
I don't know.
about, I'm no, that it makes sense, but it's, a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is intention and what people's
Mhm.
intentions are. And especially with the places that we came from, I remember being asked multiple times, like, do you want to go up? Do you want to go up? And like, meaning get saved. Like, do you want
Mhm.
to? And, every time I was like, you need to stop asking me. It has to be my decision. But then when I was saved and I felt part of everything, and I felt so much better, and it was helping me and my mental health, I found myself doing the same thing to other people. I'm like, do you want to go up? Like, do you want to say the prayer? And
Mhm.
you know that I really wanted to give it to them. Like, look how much it helped me. Like, I want to help you too. You
Yeah.
know?
Mhm. Yeah, sure. I know. But I think, in my reasoning, it came down to any type of manipulation is not love in my estimation.
No.
And so it's like, whether it's intentional or not intentional. And that's why I was like, I can't get on board anymore with this idea that there's a God who wants to judge
Right.
humanity. So I don't know, because that ultimately is like, you better do what I tell you, or else, it's
Right.
no matter how many times you want to reframe it as discipline, or for your own good. I don't
Tough
know.
love.
I don't buy. I just didn't buy it
I
anymore.
hate tough
So
love.
you hate love?
No, tough love.
Oh, I was like, you hate love. All right, what's the story behind that, Karen?
Carolyn? No, I hate tough love. I hate it when they're like, "Oh, it's tough love."
Yeah.
Love shouldn't be tough.
Yeah.
We talked about this. Love is not painful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, like, what other reasons would people have for believing that type of those thoughts about the end of days?
The end of days. Look at like our cinema that we have. Like we have literal like. So okay, here's a good example. I dated this uh, engineer for 2 years. And he was atheist. He actually had, you know how they have the silver Jesus fish on the back of their cars? Some people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He had a dinosaur, a metal dinosaur. It looked like looked like came on the car, eating the Jesus fish on
I've
his
seen them.
car. But if you went home like to his house, he also had a stockpile of canned goods, water, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "What's this for?" He goes, "Well, at any point, if we get a sun flare, it's gonna wreck the earth. And scientifically, if that happens, we have to have provisions, and a lot of things is gonna." So and I'm saying staunch atheist. He doesn't believe in the end times, but he does believe, like, if a sun flare is basically, obviously, the sun is a big ball of fire. If it has a sun flare and it kind of like an explosion on the sun, it can affect the Earth's heat and tides and things like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
from a scientific point, which all things begin and all things end, he was looking at it like, if we had I just remember him saying, if we ever have a sun flare, we're ready. And he has. Oh, that's my medicine alarm. And we have a go bag, and he kept a go bag in his trunk too. And he's not the only one. I have another friend who is actually a Christian. He's like a home Christian. They do church in their house with like 4 or 5 other people.
Mm-hmm.
He has a whole bag like that has like an axe and a knife and tape and flint and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
just in case. So I think it's really wired in us. I think it's still part of our brain that it's a survival. It's a survival situation
Mm-hmm.
because we're so domesticated that we know in the back of our heads, if we were ever left without the amenities that we have, um, we would be like little toy poodles out in the jungle. Like, what do we
Yeah.
do? So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just built and wired into us, and then it comes out and we interpret it in different ways. Kind of like when Y2K happened, and we thought every computer in the
Mm-hmm.
world was going to blow up, and we thought that the nuclear power plant was going to blow up because the computer can't go from 1999 to 2000.
Right. Yeah,
And
we were sure that was going to happen.
yeah.
My family and had a very remote, let's say, bunker. I guess I don't
You
know.
had a bunker?
Yeah, yeah.
Girl, that's actually kind of cool. I'm sorry.
It was pretty cool, the ingenuity and creativity that went into making this off grid bunker type place that was completely.
Please explain the bunker in detail.
Okay,
Where
okay,
is it?
okay.
What was in it? Was it under the house? I need to know.
No, it was in a completely different plot of land, many miles away in Booneyville.
How would you have got to it?
Somehow, I don't know. Somehow it found a way, but you want to be away from the city population. So it was there. It was
Yeah.
it was just like a big like warehouse with enough beds for all the members of the family, a wood burning stove, like a kitchen stove, but it was burned with wood, heated up
Was
with
it
wood.
underground?
No, it wasn't underground. It's on top of ground. But there was I didn't never saw this because I wasn't like actually quite involved. I would go see it occasionally. But there was like a root cellar underground where like storing vegetables was
Yep.
planned. Yeah, it was all diesel run. I think was a diesel run. It was like solar. There was a water, like a well, a water tower.
What year was
Yeah,
this? Like, what year did you get this? Did you guys acquire this about?
yeah. I think it. Well, I mean, it was before the turn of the before 2000, because that was one of the
Well,
concerns. I was actually out there at it helping burn tumbleweeds. Actually, the day of, like, that night of New Year's Eve, and then we went back to our home, and watched the ball fall, and
you
nothing
went
happened.
home on the night
Yeah,
that you thought the
yeah,
world was going to end,
yeah,
even though you had a bunker?
yeah.
Was this in Connecticut?
No,
Oh,
no, no, it wasn't. No.
what?
So, I mean, there's a lot of things that don't
I
really
don't
make
get it.
sense about the way
Okay.
that things were. Like, there was a belief that it was going to be the end, but yet sometimes it wasn't fully lived out. It was a weird cognitive dissonance on a lot of different points. Like, you would think if you really truly believed that, like, we would have stayed down there, right? And
Right.
yeah,
I thought you were
yeah,
going to say we huddled together
no, yeah,
by the wood stove and
no.
prayed that God would pass over us.
No, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who did, but it was a weird mixture of yeah,
Wow.
weird though, right? That it would be, you would think that, and you would have a place, but then you would go back into the city
Oh, this
for
is
the
the day
actual
we
turning
think
of the clock.
everything's going to fall apart, but let's go home and first and just like double check.
Yeah.
So that when the world starts falling apart, we will make a mad dash
Yeah.
on all the roads that all the other people are trying to dash on.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah, doesn't make sense really. I'm sure that maybe there was some other, but again, I was kind of just going along with it. So I kind of was just there for the ride at that point in time. I was like in my early 20s. So my husband, well, he was my fiance at that time. He went down there with me too, and we did a lot of work on that little compound area. So
Are you? I, I always think about this after I re-listen to our podcast. Are you still close with your family?
hmm yeah, yeah,
How did first of all this? Oh, I have so many questions.
yeah.
But not all pertaining to this. Do they still have the bunker?
No, not anymore.
They they let go of their bunker.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we were talking about reasons why people might believe this, right? And I think that there was a bit of this, maybe not consciously, um, to have a desire for all of my siblings to come back to the home at some point. And I feel like that might have been the motivating factor behind all this, kind of like a wishful thinking, like, oh, I really want
Yep.
everybody to be back under one roof again. And so I'm going
Yeah.
to prepare this place for if the end of the world is coming, I have this reason to prepare a place for everybody, my kids and their kids, to come, and we'll all be together, and maybe even be in charge of everything again. well, so that could be it. I think another reason why people possibly do it is just having if their current life circumstances aren't that great, you can feel like, have this hope for a way out eventually.
Yeah.
That's
My
the
aunt was or is a born again Christian, and she had four children, um, naturally, and then adopted five more over the years. And she lived in the same house that her and her husband bought when she was 18, and they added to it and everything. And the irony of that is that, when you were 18, you had to move out or join the military. Either way, you were leaving the house because
okay.
it was a tight squeeze,
Yeah.
because they were staged at different ages, um, as the older ones moved out, that's when she adopted new ones. Um, but she had this big house and she added on all this extra room, but she told all her kids to leave when it was time, and she expected them to, like, I don't know, come back or
Hmm.
live nearby, and so now she's in this big old house and all the kids are gone. And
Hmm.
they're gone because it was so strict I mean, this woman, you couldn't read a book that she didn't read first. You couldn't watch TV. When we were growing up, at their house, they had a TV probably the size of this iPad, and they got 1 hour a day. And you're going to bet it's at 12 o'clock, and it was Little House on the Prairie. That is the only show they watched for many, 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 many years. And
Yeah.
then something happened. I forgot. Oh, when she fostered her first child, which was Isaiah, and then adopted him, we think the state gave her money because all of a sudden they had a big screen TV, a convertible, a pool. I don't know what happened there. We're not sure. But
Yeah, interesting.
they went from like welfare to like well off. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but she was one of those that, thought, oh, this I have all these children, I've raised them all in the church, and they're gonna be church like me. And I don't think any of them go. Maybe one or two of them go to church out of 9.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think
Definitely about 8.
I've seen religion be a tool for really controlling family members past the normal ages. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's always an element of taking care of people when they're in your household, but this was definitely control, and then the control is hard to let go of when everybody is able to leave the house, so it'll can
Yeah.
still be used. Yeah,
So I want
sad.
to look at some of my notes here because there was so much to consume with the
Mhm.
end times. Slash, okay, clarify this for me real quick.
Okay.
The end times starts, and then the second coming comes, right? Jesus second
Right.
coming
The
comes
second coming comes at the end of that 7-year tribulation.
to usher in peace and
Yeah, so
whatever.
what happens is Jesus comes back, takes all of his people home to heaven. He
Mm-hmm.
destroys the earth, like
Mm,
destroys in fire. The old earth is destroyed, and a new earth is arises. A new
okay.
heaven and a new earth that is now perfect. Doesn't have sin. There's no more sin. There's no more um, whatever. So,
So the other thing that I sent you was a 10-part series from this girl on TikTok. And
mhm.
now we're going into some uncharted territory.
Yeah.
But stay with me. So the second coming. Now, we've talked about the different religions in the world that believe the end is going to happen or could happen, whatever.
Mhm.
And some people believe Jesus is the second coming. Some people believe um, there'll be like Jehovah Witnesses believe the 144,000 will be saved.
Right. Yeah,
And
Christians believe that too. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So and they'll all be resurrected. So as I was watching this 10-part series of this girl that I sent to you, she said something along the lines of Christ. Oh my gosh. I just had it in my head.
Christ consciousness.
Yes, thank
Mhm.
you. Christ consciousness. So let's say
Mhm.
you don't believe in God, but like the end is coming anyway. So like let's look at our world from a plain where we are moment. So places that are peaceful and thriving are now being burned to the ground and bombed and everything. Global warming is happening and the planet is suffering. And so the idea is that now this is way outside of everything, but let's talk quantum physics for a minute.
Oh, God, you can, because shoot.
Okay. So it's it sounds very different, but it's kind of the same. So
Mhm.
if you believe Jesus is going to come back and usher in this peace, how crazy is it to think that, let's say, the earth is dying? The earth is dying. The earth is suffering. And the earth is suffering right now because people are destroying it.
Mhm.
Mankind is cutting down the rainforest and paving over everything and just blowing things up and killing everybody. Which at this point, I kind of understand why God flooded the earth with Noah. And I say that because there's so many of these warnings from scientists that are talking about global warming and the rise of sea level. So, and that wouldn't be God's fault, because that would be man's fault, because we have the power to stop it, but we're not doing it. So let's assume, I think they said by 2060, which would be in our lifetime, if I make it that far, that the earth would be 90% water at that point. And then that is where, so most of the world will be underwater, great losses. And that's where I think I'm trying to transfer the religious part into the existential idea. So the 144,000 might be the people that are just left after.
Mhm.
So let's say this prophecy is really going to happen. So
Mhm.
we have global warming, all these animals, all these people are wiped out. There's, let's say, roughly 144,000 left on the
Mhm.
planet. Now, because there's no land to fight over, and because the people, there's, the more people you have, the more opinions, the more dark things go on. So the smaller the tribes, the more peace you're going to have, right? So let's say the 144, they make it through the global warming, and they make it through the wars and all this, and now they're like, okay, we're starting a new golden age, because we've been through the dark ages, we've been through all these ages, the Renaissance period. What if this is just a new slate in human history, where now we're starting the golden age, where we are advanced beings, we do know about technology, we do know more than, but even if most of that's wiped out, we can start over and start again. Now, this is where the physics comes in. Some people are saying that if you can get to a level of consciousness, even if you're not religious, Christ consciousness would be the second coming for people that don't believe in God. It's just the idea that you act as though you personify Jesus's morals, like love one another, be good, be peaceful, blah, blah, blah. That's Christ consciousness. So an atheist can have Christ consciousness, and you and I, if you were still believing this way, like, we'd just be Christians. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it applies to everybody. So even if you're not religious, even if you don't believe in God, if you are in tune with yourself, your body, your energy, your earth, the earth's energy, some people are saying that because time is not linear, um, you can jump timelines. So I know. This, stay with me. And if I lose you, tell me.
Okay.
So there's a theory that there's more than one timeline happening at any given time, right? That's where some people think ghosts come from. Like, if a ghost, let's say a ghost appears in your room, that ghost might in their timeline might not be dead. They're just the veil is just mixing a little bit. Okay,
Okay.
so the idea, and I think some of this is like a Buddhist mindset too. When you get to a higher level, you vibrate higher, you act in love, you act with peace, your energy, your physical energy vibrates higher. That's what Reiki's for, to align your energy. Everything's an atom, everything's energy. So if you get to a higher vibration, a higher level of consciousness, that means that's why monks can meditate, and they can do what's called astral projection. Do you know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's assume once we get to this higher level of state of consciousness, we can decide, okay, here's our earth, and like referencing the Bible, it's turning into a fireball and dying. Instead of God coming down and plucking us out and being like, you're saved, we have, because of the good works and the good things that we have done and the way that we have lived our lives and vibrating ourselves, we can take ourselves out of the end times and put ourselves in another timeline that's running parallel to
Wow.
the timeline that's happening. So here's the earth that's well, here's the earth that's not well. The earth that's not well is dying out. Boom, dead. Now, well, no, it's not dead. The earth's not dead. Everybody dies on the earth, right? Let's say everybody dies on the earth. And we, let's say you and me, are on the other timeline where the earth is doing really good. But you can't stay in a separate timeline because there'll be another one of you in that timeline. I mean, so once everyone's dead from our timeline that has either killed themselves or been killed or whatever, the earth will naturally grow itself back. Once man's not here destroying it, the natural flow of things will start back up. And the idea is that once the earth has healed itself, because again, we're living in peace and a higher vibration, we can then bring our consciousness back to the earth that the others destroyed and continue our timeline and live in an age of peace. From a non-religious point of view. Well, I shouldn't say non-religious, but a non-Christian point of view.
Yeah.
Does that make sense the way I explained it?
Yes. I mean, yeah. I mean, I hear there's, the thing is though, right, is that it's another postulation. It's another guess about what might happen on a lot of different ideas, right? So it's a combining of a whole bunch of different hypotheticals, which is all we can do with these end time predictions, correct? So while it's really fascinating to look at, and there's some ideas in there that I would love to look closer at because they're really, compelling. What does it benefit you or I to hold to this or to spend too much time obsessing over it, right?
I have an answer.
Yes.
I have an answer.
Go ahead.
Because with the evangelicals, you're living your life in a state of fear and anxiety, waiting for shit to hit the fan. If you're living your life, which is kind of what progressive Christians and Buddhists and monks and stuff like that are living now, is you're not living in a state of fear. You spend every day being present, following the guides of your own body and your own self and your own energy. So every day that you, even if none of this happens, if you're spending every day being afraid and doing things in the spirit of fear, that's where you start acting out, getting angry, whatever. But if you're every day, like tonight, I'm going to centering prayer, I'm going to meditate. That every day that you work on yourself to be at more peace and at a higher vibration and connect with others is you making a actual impact in real time in your life. So if I walk out of centering prayer and I'm, learn to calm myself, or, after a couple of years, I'm able to teach it to somebody else. Now I'm raising their vibration, and when we're together, we're all raising each other's vibration. So it's all positive, and we're passing positive intentions and positive energy in a space. Because when a negative person walks into your space, you can feel that. It feels icky. It feels uncomfortable. It feels ooh. So if you're living a life where you're actively working to be a peaceful, loving vibration, no matter what happens, you're still living well and you're putting good into this world.
Yeah, and I whenever I hear end times talk, though, I still feel the same way of being, the same approach is there. I have figured out the right way to live. In this case, it's maybe trying to live on a higher vibration. And that's all fine. That's really good. Just like Christians, if it's just my goal is to live a life that's closer to God, that's a good and right thing. And that brings benefits. But then I guess the only thing that I would be concerned with is as long as at some point there doesn't get to be turned this other that we need to fight against, like the people who aren't raising their vibrations, or as long as that approach doesn't get there, and that that us versus them type of mentality doesn't start to take over then, I don't see any harm in it. But I'm just getting to that, like, I'm just wary. I'm like, okay, whoa,
I know.
hold on. This is a lot of hypotheticals and what ifs, and maybe that's not the best place to set down your house life. You like build your life house on top of these what ifs. So
Right.
I don't. But on the other hand, some of these ideas are really really fascinating to look at and to consider, like the idea of a Christ consciousness. There's, you could, that's definitely something, I think you described it well, Christ consciousness as being, like a state that maybe Jesus Christ first lived out for us as an example. And we can also move into that state of being closer to God, of being, you say it as being higher vibration, um, moving into this.
Basically,
Yeah.
basically, they're saying that the second coming of Christ isn't going to be him walking down out of the clouds. It's going to be the people actually living like him, with his consciousness,
Yeah.
you know?
Because I think instead of deifying Jesus as a person, they
Right,
kind of see him as the firstborn into this a broader way of being, which they're calling Christ consciousness, which
right,
every people, the theory is that all people can have a part of this higher consciousness, this raised awareness consciousness, that's maybe less pulled down by the what you call sin or error way of living.
right.
Yeah, that we can have entrance into that. So yeah, that's an interesting way to look at Jesus Christ, Jesus the Christ, right? Who was he? Was he um, anyhow? Well, I don't know.
That's what he wanted. So if you look at the way that Jesus lived his life, he lived every day presently. He would
Hmm.
look at people and go, "Drop your nets, let's go. Don't think twice, come on." And they would do it. So, we don't live like that today, but if we did, if we lived the Christ consciousness and we lived the higher vibration, it's not about telling other people, you. It's you're only in charge of yourself. I'm not going to be like, please go to therapy, please do this, please do that, please do this, please do that, so that you can be good and then we can be besties. No, you know what? That's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility to get you into heaven. It is not my responsibility to make you peaceful, and it's not my responsibility to heal you. It's my responsibility to heal me. It's my responsibility to put good out there even if bad is happening to me, which I don't always do
Hmm.
well with sometimes. You know what I mean? So I think personally I am subscribing to this idea that um Christ was put here to teach people to have a good conscience.
Yeah, and when I was actually still kind of in the mindset of being worried about the end of the world and thinking about ways that I could prepare like my family. I was thinking those that way. I still had a moment where I was like, you know what? I think that really as prepared as I could be, if I was fully prepared, I think I would be in a state of I've prepared and now I've got to protect myself and all of my stuff now. And I think that I
Mhm.
was like, you know what? I think that God is calling us to no matter what we have, if we're prepared or not prepared, can we have an open heart to share what we do have with
Mhm.
those in a hard time? And is my heart ready to be in that space? Like my heart prepared. That's probably the most important thing because I can't know the future. I can't know what's coming, but I can try to, like you're saying, with we trying to raise your vibrations or whatever.
Mhm.
You can take care of your own heart to prepare it to be in a loving, open place so that whatever does come, you can act in the spirit of love and not fear. And I was like, well, then what is the purpose of even holding on to any of these thoughts about the end of time? I'm just going to let it go. Just let it go. And
So I
sure,
think
it
that's
can
a
be an
fear
interesting
tactic.
thing. It can be an interesting thing to consider And it is fascinating, and I can still get wrapped up into looking up information about it. But I think I've just decided that it is not going to worry me on the day to day anymore. Period. The end. I've seen it
Good.
worry too many people and
Mhm.
completely change the course of their lives and what they do day in and day out. And it's just, yeah, not something that I am choosing to participate in
I'm
anymore.
sure you've heard this. I'm sure you've heard this before. It will steal your joy.
It will, yeah, it
It will
does.
steal your joy.
Yep.
I think the version of the end times that you and I were taught uh, were just another tool for fear. And there's some Christians that believe the end times were literally just a parable to teach you not to be a shitty person. So, you know, there were so many parables in the Bible that, and most of the time it was going over everybody's head, especially the apostles. They were like the dumbest bunch of people.
You know what I always got from the parables? I always was thinking, it's like Jesus is not he's like pointing to all of the way that we normally think. He's like, yeah, you say this, but in this other way of living, like you're saying, this higher vibration, if you put it that way, things are actually flip-flopped, or you actually think this way. And he's like twisting the way that they're viewing the world and helping them see through another lens. And you could
Yeah.
call that, the kingdom of heaven, looking through the lens of the kingdom of heaven instead of the way of this world. And that's it just is always fascinating to see, and to see what is he doing with that parable there, like, to be such a good teacher, to be able to do that, to like make people rethink the way that they're viewing the entire world. What a cool ability to have. I would love to be able to do that, to be like so quick on my feet with being able to throw out an idea and a story, and then be able to make people shift the way that they're thinking. That'd be so cool. Anyways.
I want to tell you, I have so many notes on this for this, and
Yeah.
now I'm looking back and I'm like, I don't know what they mean.
Oh,
Um,
give me some ideas. Throw me out something.
well, wait, okay, so to tag on to Christ consciousness real quick,
Mm-hmm.
Revelations 19:11 through 14, I have listed, and then Revelations 19:15 is the breath of his mouth defeats him. Meaning, what if, instead of, because they're talking about the second coming, Jesus coming down, the breath of his mouth defeats evil, right? What if it's the not Christ coming down, but it's the consciousness of the people and the kindness, the breath of his mouth, the words of Jesus, the way Jesus spoke and acted.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I was like linking that scripture to that idea. But
Mm-hmm.
what I really liked was Hinduism and Buddhism. They don't believe it's a judgment day. They don't believe it's the end. They believe every end leads to a new beginning. There's no violent end. The word
Mm-hmm.
apocalypse means it's a personal revelation that occurs in the mind. Revelations, which is the title of the end books, right?
Of the New
So,
Testament. Yep. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that kind of links in together.
Yeah, and that's what we see in nature, right? We see these cycles of
Yeah.
death and rebirth. So that would make sense to me.
So the end times or the apocalypse is mentioned 1,848 times in the Bible. That matters, obviously, because you and I know that how many times something's mentioned in the Bible is important. For every time the Bible speaks of the first coming of Jesus, the second coming is mentioned 8 times.
Hmm.
The Christian Messiah is Jesus, who comes back to cleanse the population of evil and usher peace back in. The Jewish Messiah is a man who will not be divine. He'll be a regular person.
Mm-hmm.
He's mortal and has to reconstitute the Jewish kingdom, peace, and rebuild a temple.
Mm-hmm.
The warring nations at the Temple on the Mount, currently, where Jesus had his guys, and then the Jewish people, and the Islam, and the Muslims, all in. That's the Temple of the Mount, right?
The Temple Mount, right?
Yeah.
That's where the Jewish temple, the last one was
Yeah.
standing, and now the mosque, the Dome of the Rock mosque is
Yes.
there currently. Yep.
So the warring nations at the Temple of the Mount, which is still happening, the people
Mhm.
trying to protect their holy spaces, where many religions began, could incite the end of the world if those sacred sites were destroyed by the other side. A war that spreads and or nuclear annihilation could be the end
Mhm.
times. Islam means to surrender to God. Muslims do want peace, but oh yeah, this one hit me. So Muslims, I'm friends with some Muslims too. Muslims want peace, but the extremists make them all look like terrorists, like ISIS. The same way conservative Christians and cults make Christianity look like terrorists.
Yeah, right. It's because of that their view. It's that fundamentalist view of a religion. When you get to that view where you're clinging so tightly to it that nothing else can stand, everything else is wrong, you
But
will inevitably have this
when I was
fighting.
watching,
Maybe it's just the culmination of an us versus them mentality, the either or um, way of looking at things instead of looking at things both and, that always creates a light in the dark or a right and a wrong or a, you know,
it's
and
tricky.
maybe, yeah, maybe that's, I mean, maybe they're, and maybe we just need to move out of that mindset that a right and a wrong. And I mean, almost like the Buddhist tradition of just kind of accepting, being able to move into that space of accepting and looking at things from a detached point of view of things as they are, as is.
That's hard
Um,
to do though, because when you look at things that are wrong, like somebody killing somebody or causing pain or abuse or harm, it's hard not to want to protect that.
mhm,
Like,
right, right. But as soon as you label things as being wrong or evil, that moves you into a space where I don't know. I mean, it's tricky, right? Because you can't
mhm.
just sit back and let everything, all the wrong things happen or bad things happen to people. You want to protect people. You want people to be safe. You need people to be safe. Um, but it's like this fine line. If you can, I don't know. I mean, if we can get to a point where we can kind of just detach ourselves a bit and look at the situation with kind of like a loose grip instead of like this, I've got this the right way to see it now, and this other person's doing it wrong. Instead of and be able to just hold it loosely and see, oh, this is how the other person is viewing it, and that's causing them. Like looking at fundamentalists and like ISIS and how they're doing, becoming terrorists and causing harm to other people, and saying they are taking their scriptures so literally and wanting to serve their God so perfectly that that's causing them that effect, and be able to have a little bit of compassion for that view. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I
I don't
know.
know.
I
I'm
think
just thinking out loud here. Tell me
no,
what you think.
that's fine. The struggle is that the people that are doing the quote unquote non-aggressive right things, um, their voices get lost, and then the darker voices win the day. It's so easy to be angry. It's so easy to be sad. It's how many people do you know that are genuinely like living good, healthy lives, right? So we're always pursuing being more loving and being more accepting because that's the work. It's totally easy to be like, fuck all you guys, I don't care. You know? So
Mhm,
and I know that the Buddhists too, they look, it's not a good or a bad, it's just an is. Not all
mhm,
things are like that. Your feelings, good, bad, they might not be. Your reactions, good, bad, might not be. Could just be an is. It's just an
mhm,
is. But there are things in this world that are evil, and there are things in this world that are bad. And if we don't fight for love and life, what's the point of being here? What's the meaning of life, Faith?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well,
Again, I'm gonna quiz you every time. You know what I mean? Like it's wired in us. It's in our books. It's in our TVs. It's in our movies. It's because we want good to triumph. Because we
mhm.
want to be comfortable. We want to live in a nice society. But there'll always be darkness there. So
Always, always, and it's gonna be with us. And
I say make the best of the time that you have and do what you can, like
it just at some point you're just always on this hamster wheel of trying to fix things, right? That are never fixed. And at some point you just kind of have to be like, you know what? I'm gonna keep trying and fighting the good fight, but I'm not gonna work myself up into a tizzy over it, or I'm not
right.
gonna, you know.
Yes. So here, the good example of that is like at the last church, I wanted to be this bridge. I was like, I'm going to teach them how to love gay people, and I'm going to usher them into this new world. And I was so naive, and all I was doing was meeting resistance, right? So it was breaking me down. And so even though I loved these people, I left them because it wasn't serving me. And now I'm in a place where, yeah, there's some challenges, but I am met with people who are also working together to do good things. We're not solving world hunger, we're not creating world peace, but I'm now working with a bigger group of people that are on the same wavelength, that are trying to put more good in this world. And the more people that you have, and when you become part of a group of people that do want to do good things and do want to live on that higher vibration and do want to explore other ideas, I mean, the people in this place, some of them are Buddhists and some of them are doing Reiki and some of them are doing like healing energy and some of them are doing, you know, are praying and some of them are whatever. They're all different and they're all okay with that. And that's the thing. It's like I'm not looking for everybody to be the same. I'm hoping for like a mutual respect and a love where we can slowly spread out from there. And
Yeah.
that's got to be the goal, to
Yeah,
make your
mutual
life,
respect. That's good. I like
yeah,
that. Hmm.
yeah, so that when we pass away we can look back on our life and say, hey, we did the best we could with what we had in a
Yeah.
world that was imperfect.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's how the end times should look.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure people in Ukraine are looking at their I'm sure there's Christians in Ukraine looking at their city that once was beautiful and flourishing, going, "Wow, this is the end times." And
Yeah.
we're sitting in here in America on our iPads and laptops in a sunny day, and for us, it's not the end times.
Sure.
You know,
Yep.
so it's all
Hmm.
relative to every person, and it's all how we perceive it, and it's
Hmm.
all not all, but it's 50% what we do with what we're given.
Yeah, and I think another good takeaway from talking with at least you know another good takeaway from talking about these end times things is also just the importance of looking at um, the consequences of the beliefs that you hold.
Mm.
And and you can find a healthier way to look at the end of the world, like you were saying about um, turning the return of Christ into possibly
Mhm.
talking about a Christ consciousness that involves all of humanity instead of being rescued from earth.
Mhm.
Maybe we're all going to be saved through entering a higher consciousness and entering together with Christ that way. Look at the ramifications of your belief. How is that going to change the way that you live your life?
Mhm.
Um, is it going to help? Is it going to hinder? What things are good to keep? What things are best just to leave aside? And keep examining what it is that we're choosing to believe and how we're believing it and what we're taking in, because it really does affect our actions. and
Yeah.
how we live our life and the way we feel about life. So
The end times. I honestly think, the end times. I honestly think, and I've always believed this, I really always have. I believe that I was reincarnated and I came from another era, and when I'm done, I'll go somewhere else and I'll either come back or I'll do it again. There's some people that believe that when they die, they can be reincarnated on another planet. So then they can just skip the end times altogether up on Saturn, apparently. I don't know.
I know there's some really wild stuff out there as far as ideas,
I
and
know.
it's really interesting to read and to consider and
The
to
alien stuff I think we
ponder.
should save. Because
Yeah.
I know I sent you some alien stuff where it talks about the aliens believing that the earth is going to destroy itself and that they're going to be the ones here for the end times because we're going to be the ones that destroyed our own planet. So they're going to like take us up and out and then put us somewhere else. So there's a lot of really,
Interesting.
really interesting theories on that. Um,
Oh
which,
my.
yeah, that's its own episode. If the Earth dies, it dies, but I don't think energy. I believe is forever. So I don't think it's really the end. I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know. There's no way to know, right? At least not at this point yet. So, so
anyone
man, I
that
tell
tells
you,
anyone that tells you they know what's gonna happen, run,
I know, right?
because it says right in the Bible, you will not know. Well, that's that on end times for us today.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'm just trying
yeah.
to sneak back in there. But thank you for sharing with us about your bunker. If you
You're
ever
welcome.
if you ever find like a picture of that, can you please share it?
Sure.
Do you have
Yeah.
pictures of the bunker?
Yeah, but nothing like big, like
No.
wide out angle. You couldn't really tell much
Nothing
from it.
exciting.
But no.
I would love to see that. I would love to see it. We'll see you on the next one.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Cut.